Okay, in this tutorial we're going to take a tour of the user interface for Panamation. I'm going to start by going to Start and clicking on Globecaster and choosing Panamation, which brings up the full screen mode. And I've already opened the app, that's why I have my alpha turned on. The first time you open this app it will be turned off. And that kind of takes us into where we start here. So this is considered the workspace. If you click in it, you'll create spray strokes. That is the default tool that you have in your hand, but we will talk about that later. Let's talk about what this workspace is, how it got the way it is, and what we can do to modify it. So first things first, I'm in a 1920 by 1080 monitor, and I have created a layout file here that I like that shows the whole workspace or the whole image. You can adjust this, you can move it around on the screen if you want to, just by doing this kind of stuff and maybe getting rid of that. And for some reason, if you wanted it over here instead of in the center, you can do that. Now the border that I'm clicking on to drag it is only 1 pixel wide, so you have to be right on top of it in order to make that change. And it's very subtle, the arrow there that's changing between when it's over it and when it's not. But anyway, um, that's the workspace, and we can go into how I got alpha up and all that other good stuff. So I'm just going to kind of close all these other things that we don't need to look at right now, and maybe bring this back to the center, just because my brain won't work properly if I don't. And I'm struggling to grab it on that edge. There we go. Okay, so it's not just you that may struggle a little bit with moving that thing around. So let's open up the workspace button. Click on the workspace button. Okay, so this is Workspace Properties panel, and it allows me to set the duration of the project. It allows me to change the resolution, which I believe I have NDI going right now. You have to disable that in order to change it. Otherwise, you'll see something that looks like this. Cannot select while NDI is enabled. So we're going to turn that off. And I'm set for 1080p right now, 60 frames per second. You can set it all the way up to the 2160, which is whatever that is, 38 something by 2160. Generally regarded as 4K. So that's where you can set that. I have alpha turned on right here, and I am sending out NDI. Video is for the Globecaster system itself, and Frame Grabber would be your off-the-shelf I/O cards by Blackmagic and AJA and folks like that. So we're going to stick with NDI for now. In fact, this button may be changing soon to just say NDI, because that's what we're supporting. As we go through here, you got source. Coming soon, you'll be able to select an NDI source here and have it show up in the workspace for like telestrating type work. Snap will give you, an actual image of whatever's coming in via NDI. You can set it as a background, so the actual NDI source is not visible on the output. And then of course clear background does just that. Preview graphics has no function. Safe area does. You can see like this is referring to really older style televisions where maybe not all the graphics that you're creating would be visible, say in this position. Mostly for streaming and newer TVs, the whole thing is visible. So back in the day, you would have to make sure that it was within this area if you wanted to be sure that it was seen. That was what that was about. Loop, that deals with the timeline. So let me just open up a timeline again. I'm right clicking in this gray area and choosing open timeline, which kind of stuck it right here, which is fine for what I'm going to show you. So I hit loop and it creates a loop control track. That basically means that it'll just play this timeline over and over and over and over and over forever, which is nothing in there right now, so it plays it really fast. Just a side note on loop, that is the full timeline. If you wanted to create pause points, they're essentially just one frame loops which happen, that the timeline will get to, and stop, and then you play to the next one, it goes to that, and then you play to the next one, it goes to that until you get to the end. Um, so paint to end is sort of the rotoscoping tool. If you have a video that you want to correct or something, that you could click in here and it only creates that spray stroke for one frame. You go forward and it creates another and then another, and you can see it's disappearing whenever I advance the timeline. So it's only showing up for one field in this case. I think if you turn off field, it'll actually show up for the whole frame. So let's see if we go past this. Alright, so we're at 2. Yeah, so it's there still at that field, and then it's off at 3. So that's what that does. Proxy video, if you have lots of like AVIs in the workspace and it's starting to bog the machine down while you're editing, you turn that on and it creates a checkerboard for all your videos, kind of frees up the ability to move quickly. And finally, grid is how you move objects around and have them snap to a grid. So I'll just adjust my checkerboard back here and demonstrate that. So grid is turned on, and I'm using my right mouse button, by the way, to drag this thing around. We'll get into other object or stroke controls in another video soon. Just focusing on Workspace right now. So let's do a new timeline and go back and close that. And I'm just going to set this for something lower. And we can pretty much close out of this. Now, that was the workspace. Let's talk about what happens if you right-click below the workspace. You get more options. Properties, of course, is the panel that we just had open. Stats shows you useful information like a stroke's size. And I still have grid turned on, so let's turn that off so that when I spray it doesn't actually snap my spray to a grid. And as I select objects, you can see size, shows stroke position. So let's grab this guy. It's telling me where it is located. Path would be if there was an animation here. So let's just animate it. We'll just right click and choose animate position and go to the end. And now what happened there? Why did it do that? I guess I created these when I had paint to end turn off. So let's turn that back on and see what that does for us. Yeah. So do a little work. I'm gonna spray a new stroke with the paint to end option on, and then we're going to right click and choose animate position and move to another point in time. So you can see now the path. That was the point of that, is that in stats you can show the path. Keys shows you the keyframes, where they're at, and mouse position finally will show you the mouse position right down here. Anywhere you are in the workspace, my mouse is currently right over 166 by 102 in the workspace. That's 166 pixels over from the left and 102 pixels down from the top is what that is. So that is statistics, and remember, we're still talking about what's happening in just these few buttons right here. So that was stats. Select all. We'll grab everything in the workspace. About is simply the who we are and where we are, what we do. Workspace visible, we'll turn that off, which I'm not sure why that's in there, what purpose that might serve, but safe area we talked about, and you can turn that off here too. You can also turn that on and off from the escape key on the keyboard. A bunch of keyboard modifiers are found in the manual. in the appendix in the back. And let's see, where were we? Record has no functionality right now. This allows you to set the default for how your animations move. Are they cubic, which is sort of a ramp, or linear, which is a constant speed in terms of the animation. Hold will just kind of bop around. And then you've got, of course, new project, rename project. And these two are interesting. They're new, so you can cache the alpha state and the video state. What that means is if you prefer to work with alpha on, like I do, and you always want NDI to come up and be running when you open the application, that will be recorded in the cached state. So now every time I open the application, those things will be turned on. Let's see. So save now. That will save the project to a default folder, which is Panam projects. You can see I've done that a few times already. I'll just hit save again. And there's my most recent work. Beautiful spray stroke going across the workspace. And yeah, so moving on to this row, I just saved it as a PNG. And I can change that by just clicking on it and choosing anything else. Targa will also support alpha. AVIs you can save with an alpha channel, PSDs. Those are pretty much all of them on this list, I think, that will support that. And then you got your common JPEG, bitmap, all that good stuff. So let's see, include project and include TGA, which is what I've just set it for, away from PNG. Basically what that means when you hit save now, this is what it's going to save. It's going to save a project and it's going to save PNG. So that's what it's been doing. This is my project, or the PTL file, play timeline, I think that's short for. And then there's the actual PNG file, which is something you could bring into just about any application, be it vMix, Wirecast, Photoshop, NewTek, whatever, it doesn't matter. Yeah, so, and then you've got new, which will clear out the workspace. You've got telestrator mode, which we're going to look at in a second, and then you've got your zoom features. So zooming in and out, you can actually, I'm zoomed way in here and I'm just kind of panning around and looking at the actual object just by clicking with my mouse on the little square that you see moving there. That's where I'm at. And you can also right click in this and say zoom to fit, which will zoom it right back out for you in your little window that you have created. And then you can just zoom out if you want to and move this thing around again, clicking on it. So a lot of control there in the zoom, and I use that zoom to fit all the time. Center is also very nice. Select area, you can just drag around, and of course you have to have that enabled. Select area first and then zoom in on it. Okay, zoom to fit, there you go. Finally, for workspace controls, you got your timeline transport controls here, which I don't have a timeline viewable. Let's go ahead and open a timeline window. So play plays the timeline, and then all these other guys you're familiar with if you've ever done any transport control stuff. Frame by frame, play backward, fast forward, end, beginning frame. And that, my friends, is the first tour of the Animator Compositor workspace. We just went over literally every button that's blue in here, that has a little blue line around it, I should say, and what they do. So you can watch that video 100 times, and by then you will definitely have it down pat, how to control the workspace itself. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now, and we're going to pick up in a moment on the stroke properties.